if it's electrified, that would be high-paying jobs for a long period of time. Joe Fields, mayor candidate. Good to see you.
Hey, Joe, how you doing?
Connection of Alaska to Canada and the rest of the country by railroad, and to have it natural gas electrified. To use our natural gas to electrify the railroad, to build this infrastructure that will be here after the natural gas is gone.
That's an experienced view, but on the government building it, it usually runs from $2.5 to $6 million a mile. Why, I don't know. So the cost of this rail you're talking about, standard rail, standard gauge, is 900 and some miles, roughly.
Right,
So,
to join to the existing system, which is a slow freight line, or 45-mile-per-hour line, I believe.
right,
And that's what you're talking about, the price
standard
is.
rail would
Standard rail,
somewhere
45.
about, $2.5 million per mile at best.
Right.
In my view. So you have to find customers for that. There's an argument in Canada over the routing of it. There's one that goes up through a mineralized zone, up through the Ladue Valley, and another one that goes down south and joins up with the Canadian rail system that stops down by Dease Lake. And Dease Lake, the problem they have there is two things: the First Nations issues, which are completely unsettled, and they've also, like they did with Anilka here, they created a park north of the Stikine River, and so now you have to get through a park, and Parks Canada is a formidable opponent to any development. So that's from the southern route. The northern route, if you take the gas line route that was proposed in Canada, they don't always meet the same grade and curve. You can put gas lines where you can't put railroads.
Right.
So creating a common utility corridor, which is a smart move, is very difficult to do.
Well, you'd want it common at certain points for electric stations or whatever, but it wouldn't have to be all of it, just at least half of it, and so that you could, well, a major point is to facilitate the building of a natural gas line by having the railroad there for most of its transportation. Or do you think that you have to use so much trucks to get to the proper type of right-of-way for a gas line that it would divert a lot of that benefit?
Well, I think you could get some benefit by using rail, because the steel that's being used in the gas line, right, as it's proposed now, there's about 1 million tons of it between the North Slope and Fairbanks, and about another 1 million tons between Fairbanks and the border. That's a lot of tonnage to move. And when you think about the impact on highway infrastructure and how it's not designed for 100,000-pound loads running several units a day, there's a big cost involved there that nobody's talking about. But the rail could carry that weight because you designed the infrastructure for 500,000 pounds per unit. So you're much overbuilt by comparison to a road. And of course, that's the contentious issue, is that if you look at a railroad, it is basically a one-lane road that's built mostly out of rock. And so it's always been a mystery to me why you can build a 2-lane road in Fairbanks and this DOT will quote you $1 million a mile, but then the railroad will turn around and quote $2.5 to $5 million a mile for railroad, for half the infrastructure. So there's a lot of stuff that is not vetted anywhere. It's just talk, and it's by some very high-ranking people.
So is that more like getting hold of accounting and making sure that they're not overcharging?
Well, I think that you might want to look at building like they built in Europe. The Channel Tunnel was built by Channel Tunnel PLC, a private corporation, syndicated. Their last version, they syndicated $27 billion between 227 banks. And Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce was the lead bank in that, and they now own Oppenheimer Trust. So, I mean, there's the facility for building large projects with private capital and being integrated with government. They're both integrated with the, what it is, I can't think of the French agency that runs the railway, but they're also that in British Rail. And I met with the head of British Rail and the head of the French organization in '97, just because we're looking at using some of their same contractors for the Denali rail system. And most of the ground and terrain we're looking at is there's no impediment. We might think of it as bad ground, but it's not an impediment to building a rail.
And the railroad, you can easily update and correct
Oh, sure.
by having automated cars that bring the gravel in and do the leveling.
Oh, they have systems in Switzerland that run 40 trains an hour over some of the passes there, and they run mostly electric rail, of course, but European rail system is far superior. We've gone away from that in the 1940s here. But one of the things you mentioned is natural gas for the energy.
To run the power plants to run the electricity.
Right. I would really talk to Dr. Paul Metz at the university about CO2 sequestration in limestone. We have a number of major limestone outcroppings along this route, and there's a 100-year-old experiment still going on about pumping the effluent, what's it called? I started to say effluent, but that's not the right word.
After you run it through a fuel cell or other
Well,
plant?
just coal powered. They're right now pumping smokestack basically into limestone, and
To capture the carbon.
90% of the world's CO2 is already entrained in limestone. There's several experiments out there that have been running for a long time where you can actually get zero emission from coal by running the smokestack into the limestone formation. But talk to the geologist about that. He's got an excellent presentation, and everyone should see it, because you'll take a different look at coal power. Of course, Alaska's got billions of tons of coal to put on the market, and rather than being afraid of it and thinking it's going to damage the world, think about how you can utilize it and utilize it properly. So this,
And
CO2
capture the carbon.
sequestration.
And you could do the same with natural gas, because it puts out way less of that, but the same could be true. So building the line, you could
The
make
cost
it.
differential between natural gas and coal is huge. I mean, the production of natural gas, becomes at a much higher unit price than the production of coal. So if you
Especially
get
recently.
rid of the bad elements of coal, then you can, and that's the emissions. If you can put the emissions back into the ground and absorb them, and the rate that they absorb it is like 97%, so you can get it. It can be done, and it needs to be looked at instead of running the other direction from coal.
And we could also export coal by rail.
Oh, absolutely.
The public mail could be brought by railroad. The original mail trains had sorters in the trains as the trains would travel between cities and sort the mail as they were traveling. Very efficient. Sometimes trains not even stopping, just pick up the bag as they fly by on a hook and sort it, and by the time it gets to the next town that's already sorted, if some of it's going there, it's so that's another issue. And the tourism potential, if we were to connect by rail to Juneau instead of building a road, that would be much less impact, if they ever do another connection to Juneau. Having a rail connection would be very simple and would eliminate people getting out along the way and making a mess or whatever, and it'd be easy to build along a cliff face compared to a highway through that area. Also, if we realigned the railroad in town to go south of town, the existing lines could be turned into public transit. And when you convert it to light rail, you can make it go up and over highways very inexpensively, as opposed to a freight line, which you need a really long grade to get up. But there's even some rail systems, like the original one in New York City, I believe. It would raise up by the intersection, and so the train would slow by gravity as you come up to the stop, and then drop off as it was accelerating to the next stop. And so they could use that natural gravity to do the local connection. They have 4 lines, 2 locals and 2 express in the middle, that would blend, or very adaptable system, very small infrastructure.